Ricky Pearsall looks absolutely jacked. Mykel Williams is making good progress in his recovery, and he's got a new teammate on that defensive line. Osa Odighizuwa, whose 52 pressures last season were more than all of the 49ers defensive tackles combined. They had 51 pressures. So, big news. I mean, how about this for perspective? The 49ers, in just 3 days of this tampering window combined with the opening of free agency on Wednesday, have added two A-list foundational pillars to their team. The two most needed spots that the 49ers had to take care of are now taken care of. Ex-wide receiver, vacated by Brandon Aiyuk. We got a note about him. Well, that's been filled by Mike Evans, and he's a future Hall of Famer. He definitely gets the yellow highlight in our 49ers 53-man roster projection. And then, of course, Odighizuwa yesterday. 49ers defensive tackles last year combined for only 5.5 sacks. As I told you, only 51 pressures. Osa Odighizuwa tops league lists in some categories. It's very good generating pressure against double teams. So you wonder, you have to ask the question, Micah Parsons obviously helps other defensive linemen, and Osa Odighizuwa put up big numbers back when he was Micah Parsons' teammate with the Dallas Cowboys. But how much did Odighizuwa help Micah Parsons? I think a lot. Remember Justin Smith? When Aldon Smith was on the edge for the 49ers, the Cowboy on the inside would command a lot of double teams and free things up for the edge rusher. I think that Odighizuwa and Nick Bosa can be a very symbiotic relationship. More on that in a bit. One of the big pieces of news is that the 49ers have yet to release Brandon Aiyuk, even though they could have released him with a post-June 1st designation starting yesterday with the beginning of the new league year. But I think our friend Danny G on X puts it best. The Niners will move off Aiyuk whenever and however it best suits them. He could have avoided this if he simply adhered to the terms of his contract. Now his wants and needs are not in consideration. There is no obligation to him whatsoever. He burned the bridge. Truer words have never been spoken, and the 49ers can hold on to Brandon Aiyuk for petty reasons. Probably they can hold him hostage all the way up until the start of the regular season, because that's when his $25 million option bonus is due. And even then, it might require Brandon Aiyuk actually physically showing up at the 49ers facility so that he can force the 49ers to face a decision, pay him or release him. They can do that, or they can hold on to him until after the actual date of June 1st, because then a trade would be much more financially feasible. The same financial salary cap benefits that you get from a post-June 1st release, you can't get from a trade unless it actually happens after June 1st. There's no such thing as a post-June 1st trade designation. And it is not out of the question, especially considering the fact that we're hearing a lot of rumblings regarding Brandon Aiyuk's desire to play with Jaden Daniels in Washington. It's not out of the question that the 49ers, who have a good relationship with Adam Peters, the general manager of the Washington Commanders, that perhaps a nominal amount of trade compensation can come back from Brandon Aiyuk, who would actually be willing to amend his deal to play with Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, at least in theory. You would need Brandon Aiyuk to want to have to change his contract in order to be traded, and Washington is the one potential destination where that may make sense. But otherwise, Brandon Aiyuk is more of a liability than an asset, and that's why the trade market has not been hot for Brandon Aiyuk. Either way, he's still on the roster, but the 49ers aren't all too worried about that as they move forward with a defensive line unit that looks a whole heck of a lot better than it did at the start of this free agency. Here, these are the proposed unit alignments for the 49ers. Alpha, Bravo, and Turbo. Alpha is the top unit. Bravo is the backup unit. Turbo, that's like the Lightning or the NASCAR package for the 49ers. They picked up Osa Odighizuwa yesterday. He is a 3-down defensive tackle. No question about it. Osa Odighizuwa is going to be in there on the running downs. He's going to be in there on the pass rushing downs. He is a better pass rusher than he is a run stopper, but that's why the 49ers the year prior went out and got Mykel Williams, went out and got Alfred Collins, went out and got CJ West through the NFL draft. Those guys are all run stoppers before they are pass rushers. You need both, but you need run stoppers first. Because if you don't stop the run, you'll never have a chance to rush the passer. Teams are just going to hand the ball off down the whole field against you. So the 49ers coming out of 2024 enacted a 2-year plan to fix their defensive line and bring it back to greatness. The start of that defensive plan was one that jettisoned veteran pass rushers who were not good run defenders because the 49ers were a bad run defense, number 29 in 2024. Leonard Floyd out, Malik Collins out, Javon Hargrave out. 49ers moved on to the rookies that I talked about in 2025. Now it was time to add the pass rush, and they may not be done. Joey Bosa is a target for the 49ers. Last year, they offered him $10 million. He went to Buffalo for $13 million. He played a durable season for the Bills, played healthy in 2025. Maybe Joey Bosa commands the same amount of money as last season, and the 49ers are now in much more of a position to upgrade at defensive end than they were last year, now that they've got some of the run defense figured out. And Joey's a 3-down player, but I think he would fit well into a Bravo package here. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Bryce Huff, but we do see a very, very competent unit as it stands. I have a couple questions. How will 5-man fronts look? And can the Hulk, Sebastian Valdez, crack the Bravo rotation? I have him in there in that Bravo rotation. The 49ers did extend the restricted free agent tender to Sam Okuwanu yesterday, and he could definitely be a defensive end in that Bravo rotation. But how about the Alpha rotation? Bosa, Collins, Odighizuwa, Mykel Williams. If you're running a 5-man front that's run heavy, maybe you toss CJ West in there. And then how about the Lightning package? Bosa, Odighizuwa stays in there next to Bosa or next to Bryce Huff, if it's still Bryce Huff for the 49ers. But Bryce Huff is your specialist in those pass rushing situations. Definitely arrow up for the 49ers. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, we talk about the fact that the 49ers have not had a true X receiver ever since Brandon Aiyuk got hurt in week 7 of the 2024 season. A little bit later today, we're going to talk to Mike Evans for the first time. I'm very, very excited about that. He's in the 49ers facility. Everything will be signed, sealed, and delivered very, very soon. And the 49ers are going to have a future Hall of Famer playing at that X receiver position. I've talked about so many of San Francisco's weaknesses offensively. They're rooted in separation last year, but separation doesn't only apply to the pass game. Separation also applies to the run game, because they couldn't space out the field the way that they needed to in 2025. Christian McCaffrey didn't have ample room to run. If Christian McCaffrey had been healthy for a longer stretch of 2024, you would have seen similar issues. The primary gravity point, the generator of gravity that helps create space in the run game, is the X wide receiver. Shanahan's scheme is built around this. Think about Julio Jones back in Atlanta, or think about Aiyuk with the 49ers. X receiver lines up on the line of scrimmage, is not a flanker, not somebody who's moving in motion. He's going to be mano a mano against usually the opposing team's best cornerback at the line of scrimmage, split out away from everybody else. If he can draw extra defensive attention, not just the attention of the best cornerback, that's valuable, obviously, but if he can get a safety at least thinking about him, it changes the math in the middle of the field. And if the math changes in the middle of the field, you will have an easier time rushing the football. The 49ers ranked in the bottom 5 of explosive rush rate last year, and that was in large part because they didn't have the spacing necessary by manipulating opposing teams' safeties. That's what you do with the X receiver position. On top of that, the 49ers could not properly block on the perimeter to spring some of these explosive plays. When I made my big article about the 49ers offensive line, this was the state of the 49ers in the San Francisco Standard, you saw that the 49ers offensive line actually scored decently well. Everybody was above average in terms of run blocking. Yet they still had a low yards per carry, and it wasn't the line's fault. It wasn't Christian McCaffrey's fault. It was the fact that the perimeter could not deliver further downfield for multiple reasons. One being the lack of spacing, 2 being the lack of positive blocking ability. Well, Mike Evans is 6'5", 230 pounds. Mike Evans is a wingspan, and Mike Evans is a dog. He knows how to block, and I think that he's going to be able to bring that culture and reinforce it to the 49ers outside receiving room. You talk about Ricky Pearsall. I showed you how buff he was at the start of this video. Well, I think everybody would agree that a few extra pounds of muscle for Ricky Pearsall would be a great thing because he would have a better chance of staying healthy on the field. Another great thing for Ricky Pearsall is Mike Evans playing that X receiver full time so that Ricky doesn't have to moonlight and rotate over to the X. Keep Ricky at the Z, the flanker position where he can get some running starts. And I think that he's going to be playing at home. I think that's where Ricky is at his best. But if his Ricky is a little bit stronger too, then you could count on him as a durable Z. And all of a sudden, you've got those first two receiver spots figured out. And the separation will be good because Evans and Pearsall have both ranked at the top of the league separation charts. Now, speaking of physical measurements, Osa Odighizuwa has an 84-inch wingspan. An 84-inch wingspan translates typically to a height of 6'7" to 7 feet tall. Yet Osa is under 6'2". So this is a dream kind of measurement for a defensive tackle because he's lower to the ground with his actual height, which means a lower center of gravity, better leverage, better pad level against interior offensive linemen. But he still has the benefit of the long arms, which means that he can keep blockers away from him. That's how Osa's been an explosive pass rusher. I mean, he obviously has good movement ability. We talked about that yesterday with his relative athletic score. But his arm length, I think, is what makes him special on the inside. Typically, you talk about offensive tackles having long arms and offensive guards having shorter arms. The reason why an offensive lineman gets moved inside is because he has shorter arms. Well, now these shorter-armed interior offensive linemen, when they face the 49ers, are going to have to square off against Osa Odighizuwa's 84-inch wingspan. Going to be fun stuff for the 49ers as they try to revitalize this defensive line. So, big picture entering the second day of this new league year. The 49ers have more foundational pillars than they've ever had. It's a roster that's obviously going for it in 2026. Between Purdy, McCaffrey, Evans, Kittle, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Osa Odighizuwa, Fred Warner, and Diamara Lenore, I mean, it's looking stock. Now, it's not complete. I think that they need to figure something out at the safety position. I'm not really sure what Raheem Morris is going to want, but you could say that safety is the quarterback of the defense because safety is the position that could see the entire defensive formation and structure unfolding in front of it. Maybe the 49ers add a safety in free agency. Maybe they're saving this for the NFL draft. That's something that we might find out in the coming days. But as we do look at this roster, we do have to note that although there are plentiful A-list pillars there still are positions left to address, including punter, where the 49ers need to re-sign Thomas Morstead. Maybe that's going to be happening soon. In total, the 49ers have 68 spots filled out of 90. So 22 spots still need to be filled on this 90-man roster. They now only have 6 draft picks because they traded a third-rounder to Dallas for Osa Odighizuwa. Will this trade be as impactful as the Charles Haley trade back in 1992? Probably not that impactful, but that did help tilt the balance of power atop the NFL to the Dallas Cowboys. I think that, you can argue that if the 49ers get a semblance of a pass rush from the inside, you combine it with the force multiplying help of Nick Bosa and Fred Warner returning. Those are the 49ers' 2 biggest free agent additions. If you combine all that, then this defense can be in the top half again. And you see that Brock Purdy was number 2 in QBR. He's one of the best in the game. He's an elite quarterback. He did that without an X receiver last year. You can already see the 49ers thought process here. Add the X receiver to an elite quarterback. Perfect pairing for Brock Purdy. Should be the ingredients for a top 3 offense for the 49ers. I think they should probably still add some speed and maybe figure out. They did re-sign Jake Tonjes yesterday, which is big for when George Kittle is out. But I think that the 49ers are on the right track offensively to fix the biggest issue from last year, which was the separation issue and the explosive run issue. And on defense, well, obviously they had to add to the pass rush. Now it's that safety position that probably is the final true big domino that San Francisco has to tackle. But we'll find out a lot more with the new defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, and his top assistant, Matt Eberflus, who actually was the defensive coordinator of Osa Adighizuwa last year in Dallas. Football, it's one of those small worlds, and the connections are plentiful, and we've seen all of them now with this 49ers team. By the way, Mykel Williams, what a linchpin for everything, right? They drafted him last year as that plus run defender. Here's the stat that I'll leave you with. When Mykel was available for San Francisco in 2025, they had the number 6 run defense in all of football. When he wasn't available, they had the number 26 run defense in all of football. So get Mykel back, and it looks like that's progressing on a good track. Then Osa Adighizuwa fits perfectly because he brings his pass rushing strength into mix with Mykel Williams' run defense strength. And I think that both of these guys can fit in on an ASCAR package. You can also swap in Keon White if you think he gives you some more pass rushing juice than Mykel. But you give yourself an adaptable defensive line if you're the 49ers that can move forward into this next era. Chris Kasarik is still the defensive line coach, but Raheem Morris and Matt Eberflus are going to be imprinting their own modifications to this defense to, I think, make it more amorphous. And that's truly exciting for San Francisco, especially with the acquisition of Osa Odighizuwa, which just made too much sense. Dallas had too many defensive tackles with Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams aboard. The 49ers didn't have enough of them. Dallas needed to shed $4 million in salary cap space. Moving this Osa Odighizuwa piece to the 49ers allowed them to shed $4.75 million. The 49ers had been willing to spend for John Franklin Myers maybe up to $20 million. This cost them only $16.75 million. It's not a Javon Hargrave situation because Osa's only 27. Hargrave was 30. Get a player in the middle of his prime, near the top of the advanced metrics in the league for a third-round pick. Seems like it could be a solid move for the 49ers. That's how it fits. What's next? Well, maybe, just maybe, a signing of Joey Bosa. Read all about it. It's in the article on the San Francisco Standard.